For those who don't know, who are listening live or to the recording of this space, THORChain is the first decentralized exchange to swap real Bitcoin. You can use every Bitcoin wallet in the world and you don't have to connect it to a website. Same with Ethereum, XRP, BNB, Tron, Doge, and many more. Eventually, you'll be able to swap any token from any wallet. It's going to be awesome. THORChain is turning into a full layer one where apps can be built on top of it. The new app layer, Ruggira, unlocks lending, perps, Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, token launchpad, NFTs, prediction markets, and much more. THORChain isn't just a decentralized exchange, it's becoming the protocol of pure, uncensorable liquidity. Very important. Swapping on THORChain is simple and it's also permissionless. There's no KYC. Anyone in the world can use it. To swap on THORChain, go to thorchain.org and click on swap. New features and functionality are being added to the site over the next few months. If you have any issues whatsoever, we have an email there that you can contact. THORChain's token is called Rune, and that's spelled R-U-N-E. You don't need to buy or hold Rune to place a swap on THORChain, but the fees are deducted from your swap and they are used to buy Rune. And this is the Rune that goes to liquidity pools and nodes. There are no block rewards on THORChain. 100% of the yield is real. THORChain is also deflationary with 5% of the revenue being burned. If you hold Rune on a centralized exchange, you should withdraw into self-custody immediately because these tokens can be used to short sell Rune and drive the price down on us. And once in self-custody, you guys should look into bonding your Rune to a node and earning some yield. A really good website to do that is runebond.com. Super easy. All you have to do is find a node, request a whitelist, and bond your Rune. This is going to get easier when we add B Rune and other things too, so keep an eye out for that, you guys. THORChain has another token called TCY. This token is kind of like a preferred stock where 10% of the protocol's revenue goes to these token holders. If you deposited crypto into savers or took out a loan on THORChain, make sure to claim your TCY token so you can start collecting this yield, and anyone can buy the TCY token as well. There's a THORChain community Discord and Telegram you can join to learn all about THORChain and make lots of friends. To find the links, go to @THORcommunity, that's THOR community account on X. Guys, these spaces, we aim them towards anybody, whether you're a veteran or a newbie, you will find something here that'll interest you. Got a little laundry here before I kick it on over to Kenton. We had a delayed churn, but we just churned recently, and something I noticed is apparently we have a new node, about 300,000 Rune. And for those who don't know, I think RuneTard's been working really hard on this. I'm not sure if this is the one from him, but shout out to RuneTard for doing that. So just want to make a quick shout out to that node. Welcome. Glad to have you. Thank you for contributing to the decentralization of the network. If you need more bond providers, please reach out to me. You can reach out to RuneBond, Patriot Sounds. I'll try and get some people to help you out, okay? And then, of course, if you join RuneBond, we can get you there. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Another thing, guys, is Solana is officially on StageNet. Very exciting. I think you guys saw some Solana test swaps going through, looking like things are looking very well. So super excited about that. And a little fun thing, you guys. I don't know if you saw Familiar Cow uploading a video of him doing pull-ups. Also, Paul from Edge Wallet. But gosh dang, that guy is jacked. And I personally think Cow needs a new name. Instead of Familiar Cow, I think he should be called Familiar Bull. What do you guys think? Familiar Bull. He's pretty meaty, that guy.
It should be Familiar Wow. How about that?
Wow, there you go. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, guys, very cool. So that's all I got for laundry. Kenton, I'll kick it to you, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks. Yeah, maybe just to reiterate about RuneTard, I think we need to start reminding people, telling people about this every week that, if you're looking to bond your Rune, reach out to @RuneTard on Twitter. And he's been acting kind of like a broker. Like he's been helping new node operators get set up and then helping them find bond providers as well. So yeah, reach out to him on Twitter. If you're looking to bond your Rune, and he can help place you, try and get these new single independent node operators, get them going, get some Rune bonded with them. The more nodes, more different node operators we have, the better. So yeah, @RuneTard. And yeah, no, I got nothing much for me. Just I've been just kind of working on little things here and there. Um, Chad, you got anything for us you want to mention? Bring up?
Uh, Nothing specifically, to be honest.
Well, maybe let's jump right into it. So the last few spaces we've been on, it keeps coming up about THORChain doing concentrated liquidity to get better quotes. And some people have been like lamenting how they've been saying this for a long time now and it's not happening and resources should be put towards it. Why isn't it happening? And I thought I'd just kind of ask you, not to, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but why isn't this being done? What have you discussed in the past? Is this going to cost a few $1 million, and or do we need somebody really smart, smarter than you, Chad, to do the code, and we just can't find the person to do it? What's or what is the reason for not doing concentrated liquidity? Is it, maybe let's stop there and see if you want to respond to all that.
Yeah. So let me explain a little bit what concentrated liquidity is first, so that we're all kind of like on this, starting on the same page. Like, effectively, without getting too much into like the weeds of it all, you are taking a liquidity pool, like an AMM typically, and you're applying the liquidity of more like kind of narrowly scoped targets of what the prices that it's operating on. And in theory, what should happen is that you get lesser fees, right? So you can have the same amount of liquidity in terms of the depth of the pool, but you can trade as if it was, two times the depth or five times the depth or whatever, depending upon how many traders are, and what their ranges are, scope for their liquidity, blah blah blah. There's a bunch of math that goes into it. So that's generally what you're getting. You're getting better price execution with the same amount of liquidity. That's effectively what you're really getting out of it. Now, the reason why that doesn't make sense for us is because we already get the price that we want, right? Like adding concentrated liquidity now wouldn't actually give you a better price execution. Just wouldn't, because we can already set what the price is, or like how much you pay in fees through a configurable, Mimir setting. So if we wanted to get, better price execution, we could just change the Mimir and get it right now without even making a single code change. So you can already achieve what that is trying to achieve, in a matter of speaking. So it doesn't give you a better price execution, than what we already have. It would, in theory, make the
Sorry, Chad,
trades.
can I stop you for a sec? What
Yeah,
is that Mimir setting? What could we change?
the min basis points fee.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. And so there's three of them actually. There's one for like layer one trades, there's one for secured assets, there's one for trade assets that could be configured separately from each other if you wanted to use like more fine grained control. But you wouldn't really get, better price execution. You probably would get, you probably would get a faster trade, because when you have those min basis points, fee thing, whatever, you're basically just telling the protocol, in effect, how many sub swaps to do for a streaming swap, right? Is it, 10 sub swaps or 20 sub swaps or 100 sub swaps? The smaller that number is, or rather the bigger that number is, the, more or less, the less you pay in fees, for that trade being of the same overall size. But also it takes more time to do that trade, right? Like more blocks, right? Instead of 10 blocks, it's doing 20 blocks or 100 blocks or whatever the number is largely. So you might be able to get a faster execution on your trades, which is like, yeah, that's a good thing. It's something we want to do in general. But we're already kind of on the right track to do that already. So we have, by adding the kind of limit swaps, kind of feature, which is still kind of worked on. That not only achieves the same goal of being able to, effectively trade faster, because the next step after that is rapid swaps. It also doesn't only just give you that kind of faster trade execution, but it also just gives it an entire new kind of fundamental, style of trading on THORChain, other than just like a regular swap. Now you can do like, limit orders in effect, which is obviously a really positive thing too. So I don't think doing concentrated liquidity would actually give us a whole lot, in terms of price execution, in terms of trade speeds. The other component to that is that, like, a large chunk of the I don't even know how much. I haven't looked in a long time, but like a large chunk of the LPs we have on the protocol, are it's actually the protocol owned liquidity and not so much like regular kind of retail humans sort of in a sense. So how many of those retail humans, so to speak, would be using this contrary liquidity functionality? I don't know, I don't really like the idea of requiring people to run infrastructure and servers and manage code and uptime and all these things like an RBot typically does. I don't want to apply those to LPs because I want LPs to be kind of fire and forget. You can just provide liquidity, walk away, you know, let things go as they are, collect rewards over time, blah, 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 without needing to like run infrastructure or like manage code or anything like this. So I just don't think the protocol would actually gain much by adding it personally. I know it's like a kind of a hit word, concentrated liquidity, but I would also like would challenge anybody who like is a concentrated liquidity advocate. Like, what protocol has used concentrated liquidity in a really positive manner? What DEX out there has done it correctly? And I don't know of one. I know Uniswap was like one of the first ones to do it, and like 80% or 70% of their LPs are like underwater because most people, because all the fees get collected to a handful of individuals rather than the collective community. I think Osmosis also made a change in that direction. I'm not so sure it actually was helpful in that case. So I'm not really sure why it would be beneficial for us in our circumstance, or how it was beneficial in other protocols, to be honest, other than just being a talking point.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for the initial explanation too. Good idea. You mentioned if we made the min swaps swap fee 0, then in theory we would have the same, say, Bitcoin price you would get on any other exchange. But sorry, or in theory we would have like the best quotes if we had
Yeah. If
min,
you if you
and
if you put main basis points to zero, then you're charging basically zero fees, and it's more or less going to execute as a like a 1-to-1. For every $1 Bitcoin, we'll give you $1 of Ether or whatever.
but what about, isn't there still slippage on the pools?
In that case, the slippage would be so negligible because if you were to do a 0 basis points, then the number of sub trades that would be executed, you'd be basically doing like a swap per cent. Do you know what I mean? And the slippage on that, while technically it does exist, it's so infinitesimally small. You're talking about like a thousandth of a penny or something like that. I'm making up numbers here, but it would be so infinitesimally small that it would be almost immeasurable. You'd pay more in fees on the gas on the outbound than you would on the actual trade.
Okay, so and you're referring to streaming swaps, the TWAP.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah.
And then same with limit orders and rapid swaps. That's like, again, like instantaneous, like there's no slippage on a rapid swap. It clears through the pool, but there's
Well,
no.
the slippage, so rapid swaps don't change the slippage, right? Or don't change how much you pay in fees. They just make the trade execute faster.
Okay.
So, like, if you have the min basis points set to 0, and you put the rapid swaps to infinity, right? Then the entire trade instant in a single block, you would trade $100 worth of Bitcoin.
Okay. Um, Patriot, do you have any
Yeah, I
questions?
do. So when you said set the rapid swaps to infinity, is this something that's going to be toggleable in the beginning? Is it can it notes gonna be able to
Yes,
set limits? Okay.
yes. So the reason why you want a limit is, so say somebody, say you get a huge trade, right? Like let's just say it's like $10 million, right? And so you have a market order trade for $10 million, and then you have a limit order trade of approximately also $10 million, which is like the ARB in this scenario, right? And so these guys are just this trade gets broken up into whatever the number is, 10,000 sub swaps, in that thing. So there's like 10,000 trades going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across the pool. ARB, then the market order, then limit order, then market, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, going 10,000 times or 100,000 times or whatever the hell the number is. And that might take, let's say that takes like a half hour just to execute that trade or 45 minutes to execute that trade. And then you're not producing a block for a half hour, right? And if you're not producing a block for a half hour, that in itself is a bug in a matter of speaking, right? So you have to limit it at some point because you don't want to just like lock up the entire block for, multi seconds or multi minutes just to execute some larger trade. So when we first so the limit, the configure is to set like what is the maximum number of like times that we can swap a specific swap multiple times in this block. What is the maximum allowed, right? And so on day one, we'll probably set it to two, right? Just so you can do like two trades in a single block instead of if you can do a
Did we lose
hundred
you, Chad?
blocks.
You
uh,
cut out for
Oops,
me.
did I cut out?
Yeah, just a little
My
bit.
bad.
You said
Just the last 10 seconds,
yeah,
15
last 10
seconds.
seconds. Right after two instead of one, then you cut out.
Yes. So if you have two instead of one, you'd do two sub swaps in a single block instead of one sub swap in a single block. So if you were going to take 100 blocks to do your trade, now it's going to be do it in 50 blocks instead of 100 blocks, right? Now, if you set that number to three instead of two, the configuration of rapid swaps, instead of doing 100 blocks, you're now doing 34 blocks, hypothetically, and then you can increase that to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 10 to 100 or 1,000 even arbitrarily. Like you can go as high as you want to, more or less. But if there are limits to it in the sense that how much liquidity in order for a rapid swap to execute entirely in a single block, it requires that there's some sort of arb on the other side that's using a limit order to be the other side of the trade, right? Which is what we always see. Like whenever somebody trades to the protocol, arbs always come in to counter trade in the reverse direction because it leaves a little bit of money on the table in a sense. And so arbs come in and do that. And so we need limit orders to be working, functioning, got good amount of liquidity, arbs are healthy, all this kind of stuff. And then depending upon how the depth of the arbs and like how big are the walls that the arbs putting around the pool prices, that tells you like how many sub swaps you can actually do in a particular block. And I don't know, I have no idea what that number is. We can look into that as later in the future, and we'll probably start with the number two to configure rapid swaps at two on day one, just kind of like the smallest step possible. Watch it, make sure it's all, functioning correctly. There's no issues or bugs or blah, 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 whatever. And then, we'll walk it up to three, then four, and then maybe jump to seven, or I don't know, I'm making up numbers, but like it'll be the slow process of rolling out that feature. And so that'll, as that number gets higher and higher and higher, rapid swaps will be, improving the performance or speed of each stream and swap as that number increases.
I mean, just with two, right? That cuts the time in half. So even at the lowest,
Yeah,
that's
even
incredible.
at the lowest setting, it's a significant shift.
Yeah,
It's good.
that's absolutely wild. Actually, I have a question regarding that from the community because you guys were talking about price execution, min bips, and things like that. So let me pull it up here. So someone asked me, okay, so they took a quote from STO, our main
Mhm.
interface. They want one Bitcoin to USDC on Ethereum. And so the min bips right now for a double swap, it's 10, so that equals 20. Our price execution on this screenshot, it's about 40 basis points. Okay, so a little bit double right in that. And they want to know what are some more thoughts and ideas to lower the total costs without lowering our slip fee to get it closer to the value that it is. Is rapid swaps the answer, you think, or what would you say?
I don't think rapid swaps would help on in this particular goal. Rapid swap is primarily just to make things more rapid, to execute
Right,
faster. Not so much a better trade, but just a faster trade. Um, the fees of like outbound fees and gas fees, those kind of come into play. I don't know why the offhand, I don't know why it's saying 40 bips. That sounds high to me. I don't know if there's. I think it could be because of Swap Kit takes a kick, right? So I think they charge 20 or 25 bips on trade. So that might be the what they're looking at, and why it's 40 bips and not 20 bips, because SwapKit takes a little bit for themselves. Um, or if they're using STO, then it's obviously bypassing the SwapKit thing. I don't know offhand like what the would be causing that. I'd have to look in more deeply. But the only thing I can think of is just like outbound fees and gas fees and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, I forgot to mention in my laundry. I'm sorry, Kenton. STO, the main swap face, it has 1,000 unique addresses that have used it. So, congratulations on that to you and the other guys working on it. Nice job.
Yeah, thanks, man. Pretty impressive volume for only 1,000 unique wallets too. Um, Looking forward to getting this to 1 million. We can do it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and just, I apologize, Patriot, to your question about the numbers and the quote. I honestly I forget the reason. I looked into it a while ago. I can't remember what it was. It was something about pulling quotes from different places, and so yeah, I'm sorry, I forget, but I'm a stickler for stuff like that. Like, it'd be nice to have the US dollar numbers all line up and everything makes sense. But let's be honest with you guys, like, it's kind of a, lesser priority for now. Trying to work on bigger ticket items and than the little stuff. But it is my OCD is aware of that, and I would like to try and figure that out.
Totally got you, man. Everyone knows how you are. So yeah, your OCD is probably one of the greatest things ever. So thanks, man. Appreciate you. Um, okay, so I don't have any other questions from the community. Oh, actually, I do. I'm so sorry. Let me pull it up real quick. Okay, so someone wants to know what is the status? I think we touched on this. It's pushed into an update, but do you have any update on limit swaps, Chad, or are we just kind of waiting for the new version to go out?
Yeah, we're waiting for the new version. So all known issues or bugs have been already patched. It'll be in the next release, which is 3.15. That'll come out probably like mid-January.
Okay, mid-January. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I've been checking out the volume. Things have been going pretty well. We occasionally have a slow day, but I think things are going really, really well. So if anyone has any questions they want me to ask Chad, you can request to come up, or you can tag me in the THORChain main Telegram. I'll see them there. But yeah, man, I think we're pretty much in a holding pattern right now, you guys, if I'm not mistaken. Go ahead, Kenton.
I have a question for Chad.
Yeah.
The min swaps per block, that was the nodes recently voted to change it to 50. I forget what the previous number was, 5 or 10?
10, I think.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, it was something you asked the nodes to vote on, and they agreed and they did. Maybe just remind us of what that is again and what improvements we should see, and will that help with rapid swaps or anything?
It will make things execute more quickly, in that sense. So let me give some like historical context so people understand what this was. So when we were first designing the protocol, way back when, in 20 like 19 2020, um, we thought about the kind of algo of like how do we prioritize swaps. So we go to swap queue, say we've got 100 swaps in the swap queue. How does the network decide upon which one to trade first and which one to trade next? And we opted out early on to have it be some sort of deterministic system rather than something that the nodes themselves could opt to put this one first and that one second and this one third or whatever it is. And largely because, like, if nodes can control the order of swaps, then you've just inserted the ability for like MEV to happen in a very like significant way, and you can get like potentially sandwich attacked. Although our CLP mathematics doesn't really, even in that scenario, wouldn't allow for a sandwich attack specifically. But in general, you can allow prioritization of swaps, and I didn't really want to give space to that. Instead, I kind of wanted to follow more of like Bitcoin's mentality of like how to prioritize transactions, where in Bitcoin world, the one that pays more in transaction fees is the one that kind of gets prioritized, in a sense. And we're doing something very similar where larger trades on the protocol will be than some tiny little, $10 trade or whatever it is. So it just prioritizes based upon that. And so the 10 number that we got changed to 50, it's a way of calculating that when it does the um, choosing of which ones to do, it would always only swap like half the number of swaps in the block. So if there's like 100 trades in the block in the swap queue, it'll take generally the top 50 largest trades, execute those first, and then the next block, it's got 50 remaining, so it does 25. And the next block, it's got 25 remaining, so it does 12 or 13, whatever the number would be, and then so forth and so on up until it gets to the point of 10. If the number is 10 or below, it just does all the trades, right? Just like it's got a little bit left, just execute them all, whatever. They're all good. It's just a small queue anyway. That was the mentality, and that worked very well before we had streaming swaps because trades would be executed in a single block, and so like in a very short period of time, we would actually all the trades would get swapped in a relatively short period of time because every trade gets executed in a single block because there was no streaming swaps at this time. But with the invention of streaming swaps, and we have like these large trades that can stick around for not only minutes but like hours, even potentially days, you can kind of have like you can have like a sustained large swap queue in theory, right? And in that scenario, small trades rather, could get pushed back where they don't get executed for 15 seconds or 30 seconds. And we were seeing some cases where people, I think it was mostly like ARB, if I'm not mistaken, but where they were like doing some kind of trade and it just would take, 25 or 30 seconds for the trade to actually execute. And it just kind of left, not a great user experience. So by changing that configuration number from 10 to 50, it just says that like if there's 50, swaps in the swap queue or less, just execute them all. And by doing that, it seems to have solved that particular issue, and you know, and everything seems to be swapping fairly quickly at this point.
Nice, awesome. Um, it's kind of going back to rapid swaps. You're saying if we crank it up too high, it could slow down block times. Would this be this is another reason to go to 2 second block times to get that done, so that we can crank up rapid swaps a bit more?
Um, I don't know. I'm not sure that makes. Um, I don't think so because it's like when you make the blocks shorter, you also make them typically smaller as well. I have to think more deeply on it. I haven't really thought much about it, but I don't think it would matter that much. Um, because I think in practicality, like if you were to set this configuration of rapid swaps to like something really big, like 100,000, for example, you're almost never going to see it actually happen in reality because as soon as the swap queue doesn't have a market swap to swap with a limit order on the kind of in the reverse direction, that it kind of just like I've reached the end. There's no point in continuing to iterate, another 80,000 times because there's nothing to be swapped in this particular block anymore because I've already swapped everything that can be swapped, right? So like most of the time, if you were to have a number be large, like something very large, like even something as big as like 100, you'd probably almost never see the protocol do 100 iterations in a particular block because it's be fairly rare that you would have a trade large enough, and the ARB is healthy enough to actually do that 100 times in a single block in practicality. So you do have these like diminishing returns of like you set the number to two and you like swaps are like twice the speed. You see a very significant shift. You set it to three and now you're like slightly faster. You're like 50%. You're added more speed, but you're 50% less than the previous number you did, more or less. And each number you add, you get these kind of diminishing returns. You know, so it doesn't really make all that much sense to put the number all that high, and because like I said, like 99.8% of the time, it's probably not even even hit that number to begin with.
Okay, cool. You mentioned if we go to 2 second block times, that's just making the block smaller to do it. So it's the same amount
Probably.
of Oh, so my smooth brain was thinking it's the same size block as a current 6-second block, but now can be done in would be able to be done in 2 seconds. Um,
Uh, I mean, kind of like it's probably more complicated, but like think about it this way: if you have to get consensus across the nodes about what's going to be in the block, right? Usually a block proposer that's been established by the protocol to choose one validator to be the proposer for this particular block. They're going to put a bunch of transactions, in that thing, but um, like let's play a better way to put this. If you're doing like probably an easy way to explain this is if you're putting 20,000 trades, right? If there's a total of 20,000 trades per day, right? Like the number of trades we're going to see per day probably wouldn't change if we go from 6-second blocks to 2-second blocks. So you still have the same quantity of swaps, and therefore the total number of megabytes or kilobytes or whatever the correct term would be here added per to the chain per day is going to be more or less the same, and that just means that there's probably going to just be less swaps per block because there's 3x the number of blocks, but the same quantity of blocks of swaps rather. So you're probably just going to what's likely to happen is that your blocks are likely going to be smaller in size, but executing faster. Does that
you
make
really
sense?
think that yeah, but, you really think the amount of swaps would be static? Like, isn't this is the whole point of high frequency trading and why Hyperliquid wants, really, fast trade times, settlement times, block times, because it's the more trades you can do. Um,
Yeah,
so you
I, that we're not a like if we were a perpetuals protocol, like that would make more sense to me. I don't in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but in my mind, I don't see Thorchain as a protocol that people use as like day traders. Do you know what I mean? I think like day traders are going to use something that's not what we are. If we go to 2-second blocks, you can make the argument that people might use us more because we're faster execution, especially when you're talking about using native assets like secured assets, for example. But I mean, you might be right. They go into 2-second block times would inherently create more volume. I'm not convinced of that personally, and maybe I'm happy to admit I'm wrong if I'm wrong about this, but I'm not convinced that that would be the case.
well, isn't this kind of the point of App Layer is to try and to get traders? Um,
Yep. Yep. The last time we spoke about this, myself and the Ruji team, we were talking about doing this like 2-second block time because they wanted to give they wanted to have like perpetuals kind of swapping interface that had similar like user experience where you have this kind of near instantaneous transactions. And there was a discussion about um, instead of going to 2-second block times, doing something even faster than that, which would be kind of like an intra block consensus mechanism. So you can almost think about it like it's kind of like a layer two, although technically it's not a layer two, but their transactions would execute within a kind of like a pre-commit or pre-block or mid-block kind of mentality where you can kind of get a consensus without actual finality, but like a reasonable consensus, and you could execute your things like nearly instantaneously between blocks rather than waiting for the block to be committed. I don't know if there is put that on the back burner or it's actively being worked on or what. But that was the last conversation that I had with them. I think for me, I was a little bit concerned about going to 2-second block times. Like it's a big. It sounds like a very simple change, and in some ways it is, but it creates a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. A lot of the code operates off of blocks per minute or blocks per hour or something like this. Getting that wrong could have some downstream effects that could be troublesome. And then also going to faster block times inherently creates generally like more instability with block creation because there's more opportunity for things to like go wrong or communication has to be much even faster between these validators. So it's like I was concerned about the kind of stability issue, like concerns around it, and some like downstream kind of bugs or issues or problems that it could manifest in our mainnet environment. That was my hesitation around it personally, and they were talking about doing this kind of like between block or intra block kind of committing system. So you could have like instantaneous transactions in a matter of speaking, using this kind of like layer two almost thing. So, but I haven't heard them talk about it or reference it since then.
I think my memory is that that's been put on the back burner, that they I think run into some trouble trying to figure it out. I don't know if Patriot, if you have any, if you know.
I don't no, I think I remember hearing something like that too. There was some technical issues there, but I don't remember specifics either.
Yeah, I mean, they've been focused pretty much on loans lately, which is a great product and a great thing to be focused on. So, getting lending out there was obviously a big lot of work and a big step and a good milestone for the team.
I have some
Yeah, go ahead, Patriot.
Oh, sorry. I have a couple questions here. First question is, this is from InstaSwap. He's curious if you've had a chance to look at the new decks that came out, Harbor, if you have any opinions on it or anything like that.
Oh, on Harbor.
Yeah.
Um, I looked at it like I think it was yesterday or day before briefly. I couldn't find the source code. It doesn't seem to be open source, but or maybe it's somewhere and I just couldn't find it or whatever. Um, I think like it's going to be an interesting thing to see how things move forward because I think we're going to see more players come to the space, whether it be Harbor or something else. And I think that's like going to be a kind of a challenge because um, if you're going to launch a new kind of cross chain swapping, platform, whatever, especially if you're starting from zero, where you have zero brand, you've got zero liquidity, you've got zero volume, and you're starting from ground zero there, you have to like figure out a way that you're going to like stand out or get volume or get liquidity or like what are these things you have to have answers to these questions, and it's an uphill battle. Like good luck to Harvard, and all that kind of stuff, but like it's not going to be an easy thing, and maybe Harvard will knock it out of the park. Like I obviously have no idea, but it's a challenge, right? And when the product that you're selling is basically identical or very close to being identical to everybody else, because you know, trading Bitcoin to Ethereum, like, these are fungible tokens. So it's whether you're trading on THORChain or on Harbor, you're still getting the same asset in the end. You're still getting Ethereum, right? Which is no different from anybody else. So like the question then becomes like, well, how are you going to stand out? Because obviously the outcomes are the same. Um, so how are you going to stand out? Now you could do it a handful of different ways. You could do it about supporting specific assets or chains. You could do it through branding, outreach, and marketing. You could achieve it through focusing on a certain kind of clientele, right? Like institutions, for example. Like THORChain has predominantly been focused on retail for most of its past. You could focus on institutions. That's a little bit uphill battle because institutions aren't really quite ready for it yet. I'm sure that'll change over the next, 5-ish years or whatever. But, you could focus on a different client, like a different service, a different community. You can try to go after it by like certain features, like what Harbor's talking about, by having, this kind of limit order thing, which is, um, it's a good tool, I guess, but it's not that unique, other we already have limit orders like kind of launching in a sense, so it's 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 a tough battle, and I wish them well, and I don't know what quite differentiates them other than just like we have this like two prod liquidity providing mechanism that in the end will give not necessarily better trade speeds or execution or anything like this, and like it's just I'm not sure what the actual like thinking is, what the actual like
Yeah.
hypothesis is about like what their actual how they're gonna grow and reach product market fit. Like what makes us different, initially is like we have like the virgin birth in a sense, right? Because we were the first, we invented this entire cross-chain liquidity market. We're obviously like we have brand recognition, we have lots of things that kind of, and we have like established ourselves already. We have a long history, like so we're not starting from ground zero. We've been around for 5 years now, 6 years, whatever it's been. So I don't know. Let's see how it goes and wish them well, and and
Yeah,
We'll see.
that makes sense. I mean, you can't know all of it. I mean, it just came out, right? So it's hard to know all the details. But if you guys ask me questions, I will ask them to Chad, even though I figured that would be your answer because it's like, well, it just happened. I do have another question for you. I'm gonna try and condense this one. Basically, this is a question about the number of devs that work on THORChain, not necessarily like the total number, but basically the question is, how helpful is it to have even more devs on THORChain? Is there a point where there's diminishing returns? Whereas, like Leo Deck, shout out to them. The questions involve them. Like they have a really small team, so they can execute really quickly. It's not fastly. That's not a word. Sorry, really quickly. And I know you mentioned that back in the early days, Chad. Back when we were much smaller in Chaos in the days, you could just ship code. Do you think THORChain should just try and acquire as many devs as possible right now because there's so many different things to work on? Or yeah, what would you say generally would be your answer to those questions?
Um, from the beginning, THORChain has always been a very kind of like skeleton crew, right? Like Coinbase has, I don't know how many employees. It's got to be at least 500, I'm guessing, something like this, right? And of those, probably 300 of them are devs or security people or what technical people of some kind. We've just never been that way. We've never had the treasury to support something of that size. Near has over $500 million of investment into their token and into their investors investing into their treasury. We started off, I think it was like a 1 or 1.5 million. We've got a little extra money since then, but like nowhere close to anybody else. We're always just stayed small and focused and being a kind of a tight knit, smaller team. Adding more devs, you know, does give you the ability to move a little bit faster in some ways, but adding devs requires time for them to become, proficient in the code, which the code is like not simple, and you're not picking it up in a month. I would say on average, it would take somebody maybe 6 months to get a decent handle around the code base. So they're not going to be that helpful until that at that point. Um, and considering we have a handful of features and roadmap that we have working on, adding more devs I don't think would be that helpful, because you don't want to be like having we're not as young as we used to be as a protocol. We have to be more diligent than we needed to be in the past. You don't want to put 10 new major features in a single release. That just creates a lot of like instability, and then when something blows up, you don't know which of the 10 features necessarily broke whatever the hell it is that broke. So it's like you don't want to move too fast, especially at this kind of age that we're at. Like if you're a Harbor protocol, for example, and you can move as fast as you want because you're brand spanking new. We could use more devs though. Like I was thinking earlier today about maybe hiring some more onto the core team. That said, but I don't want I don't think that we're ever get to a place where we're going to have a very large dev team. I don't think it would be a good allocation of resources.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying last space, the new chain client team on the Nine Realm side is coming online, right? They're new devs, it's a new code base, so they're probably going to need their handheld for a little bit before they can really start revving up these chain clients on a rapid pace.
Well, that's like the nice thing about that is that like they're not like general devs in a sense. Like they're very kind of focused on a very specific thing, which is very repeatable. So the code around Bifrost, while is not simple, I don't want to undersell in a sense. It's on a simple code base, but it's more narrowly scoped and more targeted. So the amount of time that it takes to get spun up in that kind of realm is a lot faster than like the entire code base. Like the TSS and the Thor node and this. Da, 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 da. So they'll spin up a lot faster, and they're just kind of repeating the same steps, like building the same chain client, but with a different insert other chain name here. And so it's somewhat repetitive. And some of these, chain clients are just derivatives of other chain clients we've already added, like a UTXO or EVM based or something like this. So they're building their own kind of their little team to stay focused, to start like just adding changes as much as we can to the protocol. But again, like I don't see us ever really getting to the point where we need large dev teams like you probably see on Near or other protocols.
Oh, right. Kenton, were you trying to say something earlier?
Oh, just yeah, didn't touch on the chains. Like, what about if we had 10 different devs working on 10 different chains to add them?
Right,
Um,
but then come the question of like how do you roll them out, right? Because like, do you want to roll out a chain like every day, so to speak? I mean, that might be a little bit too much too fast. So like, you don't want to be making changes to a protocol, that quickly, because if you move too fast, you could break a lot of things.
okay, gotcha. So it almost is kind of a the fewer people does help gate it and
It it,
move
it does,
slower.
but also keep in mind that like every chain that we add to the protocol, at least from a fundamentals perspective, like has diminishing returns in terms of trade volume, right? Because like once we add, Zcash is kind of big right now for whatever reason. Solana's kind of big right now in terms of volume. Maybe there's a couple more that are like got some decent volume. But like if you were to add 10 chains, like the first two or three chains would have be, three times more volume than the next, seven chains added. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense?
Yeah, it does, and I understand. I agree with you, but this was this was the idea with not prioritizing Solana, and then what happened is Chainflip did it, and that was their way to differentiate themselves, and so they got in like a dirty sock, right? And
Yep.
then Thorchain also passed on Zcash, which that's big volumes for near. So we don't really know which chain is going to take off and do well. And at the same time, if we just keep adding them, what we're doing is preventing our competition, right? We're taking
Yeah, but even with like those examples of like Solana and Zcash are kind of unusual examples, but let's just take them anyway. Like the amount of trade volume that Near does for Solana or Zcash is like really not that much. It's maybe like 10 million, in a day or something like that. It's not nothing. I'm not scoffing at it or anything like that, but it's not like a make or break kind of thing. It's like a small kind of leg up to some degree. And we'll rectify that. We're adding Solana probably in January, I assume, and Zcash probably right around the similar time, I hope. Um, but like all the other chains that Near supports, like Sui, for example, and whatnot, like the ones we don't support, have infinitesimally small amount of volume.
Yeah, I get it. That's also right now, right? I mean, we're all expecting crypto to grow and expand, and
Yep.
who knows where it'll go. And
Who knows where
and
to go?
there's also the indirect benefits too, like with near in is it Zashi wallet, like
Mhm.
they're getting free promo. Like Bankless, wrote an article about near and Zashi, and like that's all intangible benefits of
Right.
them, right?
Right. And that's what kind of like shifted my kind of worldview in this topic. Like historically, I've kind of been against adding long tail kind of chains because it's diminishing returns on the value that it provides to the protocol, and also but not diminishing the amount of you know dev time to support the particular chain, the cost that it costs for node operators to support that particular chain, for maintenance related issues, or bugs or issues of the chain blows up, or instability of whatever those chains are with us, so we have more kind of outages on Thorchain per month or whatever, because the number of chains we support is more than it was the previous month. That gave me pause about all this. But then you're right in saying that there's like this, there are some significant amount of value that is kind of hard to measure. That's kind of intangible, and you just can reference an example of um, that podcast referencing near and whatnot, and also like being more of like a one-stop shop where people can come to us because they know that we'll support their chain, whatever chain that is, and having confidence about that. Like that's more like those are kind of intangible values that are not really kind of you know you can't really kind of mark it down on a piece of paper necessarily, but they do provide value.
Yeah, that's what my brain is stuck on the intangibles. And
Yeah.
I like I think about Coinbase and Binance, like they just keep listing tokens. They face the exact same problem, right? Every new token is law of diminishing returns, but they're doing it to stay relevant, give something to the users. And that's kind of how I view Thorchain. Like we had to just keep doing it, keep adding it, and it's how we just like maintain dominance, maintain our position.
Yep. Yep. It makes sense.
I have a follow-up question on a question earlier we had. So I mentioned, sorry, I asked about the number of devs on THORChain, but someone wanted to have this clarified. They said, well, what about the app layer? Does the app layer, since where they're building new primitives on top of THORChain, this is something, could you, like, hundreds and hundreds of devs could work on the app layer side, no problem. Any opinion on that, Chad?
Yeah, the app layer and the core protocol are separate kind of roads, right? And they operate, almost entirely separate from each other. So you could have hundreds and hundreds of devs on the app layer producing whatever apps that they're all producing. And there's no, barrier or boundary to that.
Yeah, that's what's got me so excited, you guys. The app layer is just that really wets my whistle. I don't know about y'all, but I just, man, I love that. Especially Redact and all that stuff. So cool they're building there. Kenton, did you have another question? I have a topic to move on real quick. Someone want to clarify.
Well, actually, while we're talking about app layer, maybe pick Chad's brain a bit more about it. I don't know. I don't know if I've heard you talk much about app layer, Chad. I mean, we all know JP is excited about it. I'm
Mhm.
curious. Is there any feature on app layer, any product that they're working on that you think is super cool that you're looking forward to seeing finished and live and how it's used?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm going to start by throwing a little bit of cold water on the app layer in general, and then I'm going to warm it up a little bit. Um, there's this kind of like mentality in our industry as a whole about app layers in general. Will that be layer twos or Solana or Ethereum or whatever. There's a mentality that we've had as a culture, as a community, and the industry as a whole, that like app layer is great because you can build a smart contract that does so many things, and people are going to be really creative and think of these really great ideas, and we're going to have all these great apps. Web3 is going to come in, and we're going to have socials, and we're going to do like there's this kind of mentality that there's like this kind of Pandora's box will open as soon as we have like basically smart contracting on a blockchain, which obviously we've had for quite a while now. But like the reality is that crypto as a whole like has a hard time finding product market fit, right? Like if you look at all of the app chains out there, whether it be Sui or Solana or Ethereum or whatever, layer twos, base, whatever, like there's a mentality that like these things will just open up Pandora's box and there'll be tons of apps and huge transaction fees collected and da 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 da. Da. But like if you look over the last like 10 years, like what is it? Oh, it's an AMM DEX, it's a perpetuals, it's a lending Aave style lending concept, maybe CDPs like collateral depositions, collateralized depositions, stable coins in that sense. There's like a handful of applications that like really get some actual usage and product market fit, and there's really not much after that point, right? Um, recently we just saw a Farcaster who's been kind of pushing this kind of like social media on a blockchain mentality for years now. And I remember even like on my very short-lived podcast I had for a very brief moment called Mad Blocks, where we kind of ripped into Farcaster and why it makes no sense to even put socials on a blockchain. And they have now shifted. They're now moving away from the whole socials idea, and they're moving to more towards just like building a wallet, I guess, or something like this. Like, I don't think that um, that EVMs or smart contracting in general on a blockchain really is that valuable as a whole. Not in the same way as like Web 2 is, and just apps that you can build in the Web 2 space. There's a handful of reasons for that, but like I just don't think it's really that valuable. And I think that like what we'll see on our app layer is we'll see Ruji built these kind of major things I mentioned that are successful, that do get decent volume. That's perpetuals, and that's maybe a Bitcoin backed stable coin, Bitcoin loans and Ethereum loans, and Litecoin loans, or whatever. And like these kinds of apps that we've seen happen time and time again throughout the decades of the years, of rather, of DeFi. What they'll be like past that, I don't know. I get a little bit more pessimistic after that point, to be honest. There's going to be maybe three, maybe four at most, five if we're lucky, that are actually like good apps that produce real value and real transactions and real fees generated and get some kind of reasonable amount of adoption. But beyond that, I don't expect much because I don't think any other protocol, any other kind of smart contracting based kind of concept really achieves much beyond these basic DeFi fundamentals.
Yeah, and the thing that and that yeah, good soundbite there. I like what you said. I really the one thing I really like is I love the privacy element to it, the redacted. So I don't know if any other protocol with an app layer that can take any DeFi primitive, which there's a lot of them out there. The market is split between all these different ones, but you can come to THORChain/Rujira. You can conduct your business, do whatever you want to do, but you also have this toggle ability that gives Zcash zero knowledge proof esque cryptography privacy. I think that's a huge leg up for us. I'm curious to see where that goes.
Well, so that can be really great and it can be kind of pointless. It depends upon the volume, right? So like a Zcash style or even Monero style, like Monero is like the most privacy focused or the most privacy preserving protocol out there in my opinion. And it's how well it preserves your privacy depends upon the volume that's being passed through it, right? Because if there's like a tornado cash kind of like clone, and I put in $1,000 into it, and then 5 minutes later I take out $1,000, it would not be hard to figure out where the money went in and where the money came out, right? So you need, in order for mixers to work in the way they do, they need volume and they need transactions. So if you build something, that has a privacy like functionality, and there's no volume, then the privacy doesn't really work that well. Like it's fairly easy to unwind. Then the question becomes like, well, how much privacy is enough privacy, right? Because if I want privacy so that the government can't see my transactions, well, then I need really good privacy because there's a lot of money and a lot of capability and very highly technical people within the government that can unwind a lot of these. I mean, I'm pretty convinced that a lot of the privacy preserving protocols out there, even ones that are popular, well utilized, are probably cracked by the government. I would be surprised if that was not the case, to be honest. So, but if you're looking to have privacy because you want to, this is not a perfect example, but if you want to, buy a TV on Amazon using Amazon Coin, and you don't want Amazon to know, how many Amazon Coin you have, or associate um, an address because they're going to ship you that TV to your address, and a wallet address which has so much Amazon coin or Bitcoin or whatever. You don't want to put both of those pieces of information into a database, at the Amazon stores until they get hacked, and all of a sudden they can look, oh look, this guy bought a TV and he's got 1,000 Bitcoin in his wallet, and it got shipped to 124 Roadcaster Road whatever thing. I'm gonna go there and with a wrench and a hammer and beat him over the head until he gives me his 1,000 Bitcoin. That becomes like a lot more reasonable way of preserving your privacy. Like if you don't need government level NSA level privacy in that scenario, you just need enough privacy that it becomes difficult enough for any regular person or regular criminal, so to speak, to not be able to decrypt my original wallet address and how much funds I have.
Right, right. And real quick, we got a comment from InstaSwap. They said, "Thank you for answering the questions. Doing a great job. Can't wait to see where THORChain is in 5 to 10 years from now." Thank you for that, InstaSwap. Really appreciate that. Kenton, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or I was going to move to Coke?
Um, no, well, you did mention something. You said the volume on, like, if you're doing your secrecy, your privacy is only as strong as the volume going through it.
Mhm.
Um, I brought this up before in the past. People were telling me I was wrong. So this is my understanding. If we had a Monero pool on THORChain, like if it starts out really small, it's actually going to be hard to have any real privacy from it because the volume is going to be small and probably be kind of easy to
Well, it's
pinpoint transactions. But I was told I was wrong.
correct. I don't think that's an accurate way of looking at it. Like when you put Monero on THORChain, and transferring your Bitcoin into Monero, the depth of the pool has no relevance to the privacy aspect of it, right? The depth only dictates like basically how fast the trade will execute. It doesn't make it less or more private. The privacy is preserved on the Monero side. So you don't even get your privacy really until the trade is done. Now the trade is done, and you have your Monero in if you're 1,000 Monero in your wallet, and now you have your privacy. And by the way, if you take that 1,000 Monero and trade it back through THORChain back to like a new Bitcoin wallet, because you're just trying to like break up the history or whatever, if that's what you're trying to do, like that's probably not going to work very well, because if you swap to 1,000 Monero, and then the next block, so to speak, you swap 1,000 Monero back to Bitcoin, it might that the two are connected, right? There's actually a reason why in Monero, you're not allowed to move funds from your wallet if you've transacted within, I think it's like 15 blocks or something like that. I think there's like a limitation that like if you do a transaction, you have to wait 15 blocks before you do another transaction. And that in part is to help preserve the privacy of it.
Like, well, that was that's what I thought. If someone did a huge trade in Monero, Bitcoin to Monero, then Monero back to Bitcoin, you'd be able to track it. Like, well, not you connect the dots and you can infer that
Yes, but
that's
the
what.
depth of the pool has no relationship.
Okay.
The pool could be 100K deep or $2 million deep.
Yeah.
The privacy preservation has no relationship to the depth of the pool. But like
And
you have to be smart. Like if you really wanted to do this and preserve your privacy, say you swap some Bitcoin to like 1,000 Monero, you should wait. I don't know, a few days at the minimum, right? Maybe even like if you want to be really paranoid about it, you could wait like a couple months, and then when you trade back, don't do the entire value of 1,000 Monero. Actually get a random number generator, and because you don't want to generate your numbers yourself, because there's numbers that humans tend to pick over other numbers, and it makes it easier. That's the IRS does. Like the IRS can figure out to some degree, at least mathematically speaking, that taxes are done incorrectly because the numbers are aligned with numbers that we make up as people, as humans. We have biases in the sense, and then the biases show up in their tax numbers, and that's how one of the ways the IRS can determine like some fraudulent activity on somebody's taxes. It's conceptually some of that. So like you want to take that 1,000 Monero, you know, roll a random number like a dice in your home, and okay, I'm going to do 234.676767, whatever. And that way it becomes more difficult to connect A with B.
and so if using your example, say 1,000 Monero, if there's uh, thousands of people trading 1,000 Monero, then you're lost in the crowd, basically.
Yes.
So that's what you mean
Yeah.
about the volume on the Monero
That's what I mean
side.
about volume. Because if there's 1,000 people, if there's 10,000 people, if there's a million people, right, the more transactions there are, the more volume there is, the more interactions there are, the more kind of shaken up, the more mixing more or less happens, sort of, in a matter of speaking, and it becomes more difficult for chain analysis companies to try to unwind.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. Thank you. Good. Patriot, did you have a
No, I thought that was great conversation. Great job, guys. I'll go ahead and kick it to With the Coke. You got your hand up. What you got, buddy?
Yeah, the show goes so fast. I forgot the initial, the beginning of my question, but it's okay. About that player, no, I will try to make this question appear again. You were speaking about that player and like finding the product market fit, and like maybe you see like it's Bitcoin stablecoin, etc. But you kind of were like skeptical about this app layer features taking off and that stuff.
Well, I'm not skeptical about like the app layer features taking off. Like if they launch a really good perpetuals, it might take off. Launch a really good like lending protocol, it can really take off. If it does, a really good CDP, it can probably take off. But like I have I have doubts that them or any other team. I'm not even picking on Ruji here specifically, but just any dev team to build something in the smart contracting space that isn't one of the already well established and well utilized things like a perps and AMM decks and these kind of basic kind of fundamentals that has reached some kind of PMF, and there hasn't been a lot of apps outside of that that actually has real usage and adoption.
I see. Perfect. Perfect. You re-derailed me to my question. So, but don't you think that THORChain and the app layer is doing something different? We have this like omni-chain approach. We can go on with the
Yeah,
Solana
yeah.
USDC. We can put ETH USDC. It really makes it easy. And let's be honest, I was a victim of the Celsius network, and the reason why a lot of people were using Celsius network, besides Manchinsky being really charismatic and stuff, was the ease of use. Like you come in with whatever assets, you put it there, it starts auto compounding right away. And now the Rujira is the approaching themselves or how they are doing their stuff. They're doing this like omni-chain approach. It doesn't matter what you have. All the USDC is the same. I think it's like really streamlining all those like friction points, and I think they have like really good, uh, really good way to cater to a lot of users.
Mhm. No, I think there's some structural differences between what you can build natively on THORChain on the app layer than what you can build natively on, Ethereum or like other competitors out there. So there is structurally a difference between our app layer and Sui's app layer, for example. Um, we automatically kind of already have a built-in kind of DEX, and we have access to layer one assets, for example, that's not so present on other kind of app layers or chains or whatever, layer ones or layer twos or whatever. So there's structurally a difference, but like even like the layer one stuff, like when you swap into a secure asset on THORChain, so the secure asset is in effect, it is a wrapped asset. Like the protocol is, taking in, one real Bitcoin and then minting this new token called, a secured asset Bitcoin. And then it gives you kind of like a 1-to-1 ratio between, the two assets. That in effect is a wrapped asset, right? Which is nothing wrong with that. Like wrapped assets have their place, have their purposes. You shouldn't have to use one if you want to just trade from point A to point B, for example. But that makes sense for what like the Ruji or the app layer is trying to achieve. So there are changes and there are differences and there are benefits to using THORChain over like some other kind of app layer out there, and having native support for Bitcoin and Litecoin and Doge and all the other chains that we'll be adding over the next X amount of time, is helpful, right? Like even if you go on AVAX, and AVAX have their own like wrapped Bitcoin solution that you can get an AVAX Bitcoin on the AVAX network. Can you get Doge? I don't think you can. Right? Can you get other Solana token? Don't think you can. And so like THORChain, like it allows us. We're not like dug into a specific ecosystem. We're like a Unitarian in the matter of speaking, and we add support and want to support the larger ecosystem as a whole rather than like specifically our own particular assets or whatever.
I don't you think it's already like a significant value proposal for a user, just abstracting away the swapping thing. Like they don't have to have WBTC or the wrap BTC and stuff like it's same with Celsius. Like you just deposit your Bitcoin. Although in Celsius, of course, they did their own bogus this and that, but we will do it in an honest way. But it just abstracts the complexity away from user. They come in with Bitcoin, they come with ETH, they come in with AVAX, whatever they come within, and they can get their loan back in whatever asset they want. So it kind of whatever is going to happen in background, we just take it away from user. Isn't it already like a like a
Right.
huge
And
value proposal?
that is one of the differences, right? Because when you want to use Bitcoin on Ethereum, for example, and obviously Bitcoin is not on Ethereum, but you have to go through a wrapped asset like WBTC, which, if I remember correctly, is managed by BitGo. you are exposed to you've exposed yourself to the risks of the Ethereum blockchain to start with. You've exposed yourself to BitGo and however they're managing and storing all this Bitcoin and to maintain that the kind of the peg between WBTC and real BTC. And then you have the smart contract risk of the whatever the app is that you're using on top of that. So you're concatenating all this risk, together, to calculate what your full total risk of the whole thing is. Like, what's the chance of Ethereum having some major problem? What's the chances of a BitGo, having some major issue? What's the chance of the smart contract that I'm using to have some sort of major issue? These things concatenate and add together. Unfortunately, it's a little bit different. Like everything's structurally built in from the ground up. So you have risk from THORChain risk, of course, and you have threshold signature risk, like of our GG20 implementation, and then you have the Ruji app or whatever the app is that's doing whatever the thing is you're trying to do. You have that kind of risk, and then you can kind of like look at those things and say to yourself, how comfortable or how much risk is there in this stack versus risk on the other stack in Ethereum land, and you can make it whatever calculations, somewhat subjective calculations about what the risks are for A versus B. But that's just you have to think in those terms, I think, if you're going to use either of these systems.
Yeah, I understand this, but I think it makes, at least for me, in my mind, makes easier for user. They come in with Bitcoin. We have our own
Yeah,
system. We have our own custody. We don't go to BitGo and stuff. I think it makes easier. It makes
yeah,
more convenient,
it's
more
less
streamlined.
steps, right? Because
Yeah,
it's all
exactly.
like it's very Apple-esque in a sense, right? Like Apple is kind of like a walled garden in a matter of speaking. Like they do everything, and everything is it's like well integrated and kind of works very well because you're when you're building or designing your thing for Apple, the environment you're working in. And that kind of more narrow view of knowing what you're working in makes it easier to build better UX and experience, which is what I think what makes Apple so one of the things that makes Apple so successful as a company is that kind of the beautiful UX they give and the full complete UX and your laptop and your phone and your iPad and your iCloud and your contacts that they will sync to this and it's all seamless and kind of elegantly put together. And you have conceptually the same thing happening, in THORChain land where you don't have to go run off and put your Bitcoin and then go to the WBDC people and give them your Bitcoin. This thing and
Chad,
jump
you cut
over.
it out a bit there.
He's back.
Oh, sorry, guys.
No worries.
Um, there's a difference between using kind of the kind of unified experience of THORChain where you can just deposit your Bitcoin and then you're already in the smart contract and you're getting your Bitcoin loan or whatever it is in a single transaction, versus if you were to go to Ethereum land, you have to go get your Bitcoin, you have to go to BitGo, you have to give them your Bitcoin, they'll give you the WBTC, and then from there you can take that WBTC and put it over there to that thing you're trying to do, whatever that is. And it's like a multi-step kind of multi-interface potentially, depending on how it's made, that can be more complicated.
Yeah, that's exactly why I think you kind of, I don't know, maybe downplay the Rujira, but I think that's the perfect example why Rujira makes sense. It's like this
Yeah.
streamlined approach. There is a value proposal. It's easy. You come with your native L1 asset. You leave with your native L asset. There is, of course, contract risks, but at least there is not the risks like with the WPTC and stuff like that. So yeah, I just want to tap in that conversation. Thanks for
Yeah.
your answer.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Okay. Kenton, did you have something? I have.
I don't.
Perfect.
I just encourage the audience. If you guys want to come up, ask a question, or if you have a comment, by all means, please request.
I do have one topic. So we haven't talked about in a while. The THORChain account on X. Shout out to the intern. He posted about the router V6 coming forward. Chad, would you just like to break that down? Maybe the importance of the version 6 router for the audience.
Oh my God, it's been a while since I've thought about this. So the version 6 router, if I recall correctly, it's a little bit more efficient. It supports memoless for ERC20s, which is a really nice thing. And I think it extends it so that I think like I think Oleg was talking about how the new router gives them more capability to interact with what's the name of that protocol? Gosh, I'm blanking on the name. The one that does stable coins across multiple EVM chains.
Tron?
Sorry, was it? Say it again.
Tron?
Not Tron. God, they did cross chain swaps like
Noble?
not Noble, but good guess. Anyways, it allowed them to integrate with other DeFi or smart contract apps that would really help. No, good guess though. Good guess. I can't remember the name. I gotta find it now. It's annoying me. Um, I remember I actually did a debate with one of their guys like 2 years ago. We got into like arguing about their design. So it was they came out and everybody was like asking questions about it. And we did the
Stargate.
space together.
Stargate.
Stargate. Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
Stargate.
I remember that. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Good. That's it. Stargate, and then it's Stargate is built on something else. The underlying Stargate Finance is built on top of some other protocol. I'm now blanking on the name of that too. Oh, Layer Zero. That's what it is. Layer Zero. It took me forever to get to that name. Now now I forget what the hell I was even talking about. Where was I going with this? Oh, Router V6.
There you go.
Yes. Yes. So it gets some capabilities in that. What's interesting that like I sincerely doubt, and maybe I'll be eating my words, but like that this will probably be like the last change to the router, to be honest with you. Like we don't really have much of a need to change it after this point because it supports everything we could want to support. In fact, like hypothetically, you could even get rid of the router. Like that's totally possible. Like the primary reason why we even created the router to begin with is that ERC20s don't actually have memos in their transactions, and so you couldn't swap the THORChain with like ERC20, initially in the early days, because there was just no way of embedding a memo with the transaction. And so we kind of wrapped ERC20 transactions in our own little router to like create a memo in addition to the transfer itself. That was like the original reason why we even created the router to begin with on day one. But with memoless, in theory, I'm not saying we should do this or this is going to happen. I would even argue we shouldn't do this, to be honest with you. But in theory, you could get rid of the router now that we have memoless. That way you could all the swaps and transactions and everything you could possibly want to do on THORChain is just done through a memless transaction, like a memless way of interfacing, rather than like embedding your intent in the transaction itself. So you could actually even remove the router in a theoretical future. Whether we actually do that or not, I doubt it, to be honest. But it is kind of interesting.
I believe that debate you had with that guy, I think that was like more 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Maybe
it could
three
be.
and a half.
It could be.
That was a blast from the past, man.
Oh
I
yeah, that
think
was
he
fun.
won.
I think
he won that debate. Yeah,
I think I
remember.
ripped that guy a new one.
You did. I do remember that.
My favorite moment of that like little debate, because I had I wasn't shy about my concerns around the design or why it's not nearly as decentralized as they were stating that it was. But I remember like I was pointing out something that's like not very decentralized. Like this whole part of decentralized. Like how are you gonna decentralize this part? He goes, I don't know. The DAO will figure it out. I'm like, the DAO. You generally not going to look to any DAOs for like technical innovation. This was one of the funniest moments I can remember from that little debate.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. It reminded me, I forget which. I don't think it was you were at ETH Denver, but you had that little dweeb on. You were on stage and he was talking smack on.
Yeah, that was the
THORChain.
Bitcoin conference.
That.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was.
Yeah.
I thought
That
you were gonna.
was funny. You know what's funny is like what nobody knows about that was that for whatever reasons there's four of us on the stage on this like panel of the Bitcoin conference that I was invited to, and for whatever reasons like I could only hear in my earpiece whatever two of the voices on the stage, and he was one of the two that I couldn't hear. So it's like really hard to hear what he was saying when he was kind of like trash talking THORChain or me or whatever. But yeah, he was just kind of like a Bitcoin maxi who was, you know, knew his crowd and leaned into us being a non-Bitcoin token, and then used that as a methodology to like, you know, hit us on the chin or whatever. Which
Right, right.
is which was funny because his whole project was like nearly pointless that he was building. Had like almost like we had more Bitcoin on THORChain than he had on his entire protocol, like times 3 or something like this.
Well, he was a young kid too. This is a thing that, that always is just, man, I don't know what society's gonna look like because, we're all the age, back, 90s, 80s, we grew up, right? Where if you talk smack to another guy, you're gonna fight, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna come to blows, you know what I mean? Like, but these kids growing up on X, Twitter, on social media, they're just like throwing haymakers at each other all day. And no one gets bitch slapped there's no consequence for just
Yeah.
talking them. That's it. Like if I did not know Chad or Kenton and I'm sitting next to you, like I'm paying attention to the words that are coming out of my mouth because there is just this level of respect as a man that I have to respect. These kids don't have that filter. So I was like, oh shoot, I mean, you're on stage, you can't bitch slap them, but you might. You know what I mean?
I threatened him actually with a bit slap
You
because
did. You did.
at the time it was like Will Smith had just slapped Chris Rock on stage.
That's
It
right.
happened like a month earlier or something like this. And I remember asking the audience, like, should I bitch slap this guy Will Smith style? What do you think?
I was there, Chad. I was in the audience. You handled it very well. You did a great job. You didn't get what's the word, triggered, and
Yeah.
he looked like a real douche.
Yeah, he was
That
he
was
was definitely a real douche for sure.
yeah
Someone
yeah.
says it was
That's
Jack Mueller or something. I don't know.
no, it wasn't
No,
Jack
no, it
Muller.
wasn't.
No.
Okay,
I
sorry. I don't know.
I would love to debate Jack Miller, but I cannot stand that guy. What a I mean, every time I see
Yeah.
him talk, I mean, he just annoys the hell out of me.
Well, it's a little bit yeah, because he's so high and mighty about the Bitcoin and the ideals and everything, but he's got a platform that requires KYC and your email address and everything, and like, which is fine, it's good, but like, don't be so critical of of other projects, other people, what they're doing when he's bending the rules for his company, right?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I know
Yeah,
the
no,
page of
I
yeah, go ahead.
I just can't stand him. Whenever I see him talking, it was just like he is such I don't know, it feels like he just has so much like confidence or cockiness for doing very little. like oh, I connected to like, Bitcoin so you could, buy something on Shopify. I'm like, that's good and everything, but like, dude, whoop
Well,
the fucking whoop the fucking
well,
do.
all these Bitcoin maxis are confusing bull market for brains. So
It's
they're young, so they got in early, and it worked, right? But like,
yes.
it's not like anything. It's not like they're intrinsically intelligent. The same thing would have There'd been another group of people in the '90s or the '80s or the 1600s that would have done the exact same thing as them, right? They're just
Yeah.
lucky with their timing and their age. And when you make that much money when you're that young, it really goes to your head because you think you're
Yeah.
smart, you think you're right, and so yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. I feel like because it's so hard to build on top of Bitcoin, there's not really a whole lot you can do on top of it. And so anything you do is like whoop to do. Like it doesn't really get that much of a product fit. Even like something like Lightning Network, which I'm a fan of, really hasn't had that much of an adoption, even though it's an interesting design and a good project and all those kind of things. So like when everybody builds anything on top of Bitcoin, there's like frothing at the mouth because something's being built. For yay! Like nothing being built on top of Bitcoin really matters for the most part. The only exceptions are Light Network and like TradFi rails, like ETFs and Bitcoin loans through like JP Morgan or something like that. Like, but building tech on top of Bitcoin, I have not seen anything built that really makes a lot of sense, to be honest.
I have Chad, and it
Yeah.
actually wraps it up, brings it all back to the Bitcoin conference. THORChain. THORChain is building something huge on Bitcoin, and that's
Yeah,
why
that's
they invited you to come speak, right? You didn't THORChain didn't reach out to them. Bitcoin conference reached out to you, and they're like, "You guys are building on Bitcoin. We want to have you."
yeah,
And THORChain is like what one of the only or the only altcoins that's been invited to the Bitcoin conference because
right.
THORChain does something real for Bitcoin.
Right,
Um,
right. We allow people to trade. The biggest trading pair in crypto is Bitcoin and stables, Bitcoin and USDC typically, or USDT, and we allow that trade. Without KYC, and reasonable amount of privacy and you know availability and being permissionless and all those things. Like that's probably the most one of like not to toot my own horn here, but that's probably one of the most significant like additions to the Bitcoin community is THORChain because it allows you to get in and out of Bitcoin without going through a centralized third party, which upholds Satoshi's entire vision. Do you know what I mean? Like it was funny that that guy was giving me a hard time about Rune or THORChain, but like THORChain is so much more decentralized than his little protocol that he was working on. Like it was apples and oranges. Like we were much more aligned to to Satoshi's worldview than he was on his own project.
If that kid decides to use Rajira app player, that'd be a great redemption arc for you, buddy. You go
That
ahead.
would be
Yeah,
hilarious, wouldn't
that would be a great redemption arc. You can make amends
it?
that way, even
Yep.
though you
he,
did talk a
you know
lot
what
in
he's
that.
doing? He's purposely using Coinbase to avoid THORChain. That's how small brained he is.
Yeah. Just
Yep.
go ahead and KYC away.
Yeah,
It's like so
that's
disaligned to Satoshi's entire worldview. But okay, or whatever.
100%. That's what gets me so excited. Our first principles are rock solid. It might take time for the market to figure out, but hey, we're going to be doing marketing soon, guys. So,
That's true. That's true.
strap. Shout out to With the Coke. We talked earlier. There's a lot of good things happening in the background, guys. I am so pumped. Were you going to say something, Kenton?
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up in marketing, same sentence, because this is THORChain's competitive advantage. It isn't cross-chain swaps, it's freedom, right? It isn't what you're doing, it's why you're doing it. We're all doing this for freedom, right? The freedom to transact without an intermediary. And that's what got Bitcoin going. That's what started this whole movement in crypto. And and you see this on Twitter, like everyone's crying, like, what happened to the good old days when we were changing the world? Right now it's all just, airdrops and meme coins and stuff, and a DAT, and trying to get the government to buy Bitcoin. What happened to the original mission? And that's what THORChain is, right? That's what keeps all of us here. That's what keeps us all going. That's what we're doing. That's our competitive advantage, right? That's what we really do different and bring to the table. And that's why THORChain persists, and it will continue to persist.
Hmm.
And will
Exactly.
ultimately win. Yes, sir. I love it. We got no quitting us. I mean, literally, the fight is existential. It's do or die, right? And so we're not diers, we're doers. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to stop. And I think we got all our ducks in a row. We just got to send it, baby, and that's what we're going to do. I'm really excited for 2026, you guys. Very, very excited. We had a rough year, the beginning start, but we recovered. And I think we have rallied like no other community probably has ever rallied before. And it's really exciting. Very, very happy to be on this trip with all of you guys, on stage and on the audience. I know it's been tough, but if you're seeing what I'm seeing, you're feeling like how I feel, we got this thing. At least I think so. So I'm
Yeah.
excited, you guys. I'm pumped. Okay. Oh, do we have any other questions for the audience? We're going about an hour, 30 minutes here. And just so you know, guys, there's gonna be a slight break from spaces. So we're gonna have another Thursday. We're gonna do Saturday, and then the following Saturday, of course, we'll have one. And then I think we're gonna take 2 weeks off. That'll be Christmas, New Year's, spend time with the family, and then January we're gonna hit it hard. Just so everyone is aware. And
Cool.
we'll be fresh, invigorated, and ready to go. And that's when I think, Chad, the new update will be coming. And it's off to the races, you guys. So I'm excited.
Well, while we're waiting for people to come up and ask questions or whatever, I did just open up a merge request today. I think it's kind of fun, which I mentioned in the past, but I'll mention it again here. But um, it's this idea that like the protocol can start executing your trade before your inbound asset hits the block, right? So if you're trading like Bitcoin to USDC, for example, the trade will start to execute as soon as we notice the Bitcoin in the mempool, and then it'll hold the outbound asset, the USDC, that it gets into the actual block. And the reason why this is a benefit to the protocol is that it just basically cuts 10 minutes off of the trade in a matter of speaking. So it makes our trades execute a lot faster. But it's also really nice because when you're setting your order to trade, Bitcoin to USDC, within that 10-minute period, like historically, like that the price can change in one direction or the other, which means that your trade, might not execute because the price limit that you put on it has, been exceeded or whatever, or not enough rather. And your trade even just fails and gets returned back to Bitcoin. So you just more or less wasted 20 minutes for this trade that didn't even execute because of the price shift and change. So this would allow that to execute, immediately, so to speak. Like probably we'll start trading within, I don't know how, maybe seconds, 10, 15 seconds. And it will start to execute the trade like immediately. So you get better kind of user experience in that sense. And then you get, up to 10 minutes of a trade executing faster. And by cutting off 10 minutes of your trade time, it makes us more competitive in the swap kit kind of UI. So we'll probably beat out near or whatever in some cases, and kind of snipe some of their volume.
That's really exciting. Does that apply only to, is this only for Bitcoin or is this all layer one exogenous assets?
It will work for any layer one, but not all layer ones do we monitor the mempool. So like we do for like UTXOs like Bitcoin and Doge. What is Doge? I think Doge is like a minute, maybe 3 minutes. I can't remember the block time of Doge off the top of my head. So it would cut off 3 minutes in that scenario. But Ethereum and other EVMs, I don't think we even look at the mempool, so it wouldn't be maybe no change there. But Ethereum and those kind of EM chains are pretty quick anyway, so I don't think it would really, even if you did do it, it would be like, oh, we saved you 12 seconds, which is like, not that big of a deal.
Right. Isn't Zcash an old fork of Bitcoin? Would this apply to Zcash too?
Yes, I believe so. I think Zcash is a fork of a fork of a fork of Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Nice, man. That's really exciting. That's a huge win right there. I mean, cutting off 10 minutes is that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Not much to say other than hell yeah, let's let LFG, right? That's awesome.
I'm
Yep.
curious, why didn't you have it set up like that to begin with?
Well, to be honest, I hadn't thought of the notion of just like holding on to the outbound until the conf finishes. And like in the beginning we didn't have streaming swaps, so it wouldn't have been that helpful, right? Because like if you're not doing a streaming swap, and you're doing a single swap, then this wouldn't actually really help you much because you still have to wait 10 minutes to get in the block to receive the funds, and the difference actually would be like 6 seconds or something like this. Like it would be so insignificant, it wouldn't be that helpful. So historically, it wouldn't have worked or been that helpful like in the older THORChain world. But streaming swaps kind of changes the calculus because streaming swaps can take anywhere from 5 minutes, or one block to 5 minutes to 12 hours or whatever, and it would benefit in that scenario. And it also helps with the delayed outbound, right? So the delayed outbound is already kind of done before the Bitcoin even hits the block. So if there is a delayed outbound, like it kind of in some sense removes the delayed outbound in that sense.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
really cool.
That could
Yeah.
be huge, man.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've been thinking about zero comp trading for like a while, on and off, and not really having an idea or a design that is good enough where I feel that it wouldn't be a security burden to the protocol. I think this is very clear. Like that's very obvious that it should be fine.
I missed, maybe I didn't make sure I understand. So what you pushed Is that like a feature complete, or is that the beginning of designing a zero confirmation feature, or is it ready to go like right
No,
now?
it's ready to go. If it gets merged, if it gets reviewed and merged into this release, we'll have it, in the next release. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure. It depends upon, how many rounds of responses or comments from the other devs into like, pointing out something that maybe should be changed or a bug or whatever. And then there's testing and that kind of stuff as well. But I would, and then also there's like the holidays too. You got Christmas and New Year's and that kind of stuff that can limit um, auditing the code change itself. So, but I think hopefully we'll be able to get into 315, and when 315 launches, we'll be able to turn this feature on and cut down our trade times. Mostly from coming from Bitcoin. It'll help other ones as well, but obviously Bitcoin's the obvious benefit.
Yeah, that's the one thing that gets me so excited is the first principles always like they lead to greater things. Like when you made streaming swaps, right? Yeah, it's better. I remember you first talking about streaming swaps, like you're talking about price execution and the power and of the depth of the pools is no longer that important of a consideration. It is such a level up that now when you look back at it, you can think of zero confirmation. And I kind of think of the same way when it comes to the app layer, right? Like, and it's just more first principles on first principles. You have this uncensorable layer one liquidity that people can build on top of, and then you can then make applications on top of that. I mean, it's just like second, third, fourth, fifth tier effects. Very
Mhm.
powerful stuff. So bullish, Chad. This is so exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny to see like how much the protocol has evolved over the years and how much like it continues to innovate and find new ways of being more capital efficient or a better UI or UX or more efficient on gas utilization, improvement performance of X, Y, or Z. Like it's fun. It's kind of funny to look back and see all the changes that have been made over the last 5 years that have improved the protocol in one form or another. You know.
100%. How did that work, by the way? Just to pick your brain a little bit. Like, was that like a eureka moment, or was this like a real gradual like realization, like, oh, zero comp is now possible because of streaming swaps? Like, how'd that work? If you remember your train of thought.
Um, I mean, this is actually a recent idea that came to me. Not even a month ago, I guess, or maybe like 2, 3 weeks ago. Uh, about this particular design. The zero conf design in the past was about like somebody providing bond, which I would imagine to be the wallets or swap kit or something like this, and then they wear the risk if there's like a reorg attack of some kind. Which is kind of nice and kind of not nice at the same time. It's kind of it's like swap kit could use like, oh well, if you want instantaneous trading, then instead of 25 bips we'll give you 50 bips, and then we'll wear the risk of a reorg or something like that. But I'm like, I kind of like it, but I mostly don't like it. Like it just there's too much risk there. But even if the protocol's not wearing it, it's still less than perfect. But this was just more of like I was thinking more about when we were having some near kind of sniping some of our volume, and I remember that swap kit doesn't recommend a certain provider solely on price execution, but they also do it on time. And so I grabbed Oleg in a DMs, and I kind of asked him some questions about like the design of how swap kit does its analysis, and how much weight does it put on one versus the other. And so I actually studied the algo that they use to figure out like how much time needs to be, how fast do we need to be faster in order to get what kind of benefits from the swap kit like kind of algo. So that really got me on down the stream of like how do we make trading faster? How do we execute our trades as quickly as possible? And I noticed that SwapKit always has very slow swap times when going from Bitcoin, because they do two comps, two Bitcoin comps for their trade. So you're already 20 minutes into it, and then you have to do the whole like near intense thing, which takes another like 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like this. So that's like 26 minutes in total, which is like, kind of a long time if you think about it in a sense. And I was like, well, if we can get 15 minutes faster than that, then we can get like a 20% improvement on our recommendations to the swap kits, like kind of like algo or whatever. So then that kind of put me down like a rabbit hole, like trying to think of ways of, improving our performance, especially coming from Bitcoin, because that's where the most of the conf counting is for near. So then I kind of came up with this notion. I'm like, oh, we can shave 10 minutes, which would be pretty good, because then we could do a trade in 10 minutes, and they're doing a trade in 26 minutes, which is more than 15 minutes, which should give us a more or less 20% improvement on recommendations. Even if we're not the best price, the time will counteract not being the best price, and give us and force us to be the most recommended trade in some scenarios, which just made sense to me.
Yeah, freaking cool, man. Love it. All right, guys, you got a little insight in how that thinking process went. Really cool. We have another question from InstaSwap. They are back. I'm just gonna read it to you here, Chad.
Yeah.
And I should know this, but I'm sorry I don't. Is there a list of assets supported via Memolist? If I recall correctly, not every asset is supported via Memolist. Will that change?
There's not a list. The list is basically any gas asset should work just fine. I don't think ERC20s currently work with Memolist. I think we need to get router v6 deployed, and once that is, I think it should work with every asset.
Okay, there you go.
And what
InstaSwap.
about Rune? Are you still working on Rune and native assets?
I actually just opened the merge request for that. Did I actually get it like on off the draft status? Let me look real quick. I was looking at that today, but yes, I have a merge request open. I'm not sure if I can't remember if I actually put it into non-draft status ready for a review. Give me 1 second to look it up. Where did it go? I know I had it here somewhere. Oh, this is merge. I don't want that. Do, 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 do.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
a
yes.
swap. It's all
Y-
it's all
Yeah,
the gas assets except Rune. Sorry.
I removed the draft status today, actually, so now it's ready for code review, and I actually got one approval already, actually, from one of the devs already. So yeah, that will probably be in. I hope to be in 315 as well. If not 315, it'll be in 316.
LFG boys, let's go. I love it. I don't have any more questions. Kenton, did you have anything else? I'm wondering if we're getting to the point where we might wrap up the space if no one else wants to come up or ask any more questions.
I think so. We can wrap it up unless there's something else Chad wants to discuss.
No, man, I think we're pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. And Chad, are you down for next Thursday as well, just to make sure?
I think so, but I'm still kind of planning out
Yeah,
my
we won't
my
hold
my
you
week,
that.
so that might don't hold it to me. But in this
We
current
won't.
moment, yes.
Okay, okay, sounds good. But if you need to cancel, obviously, no big deal
Yeah,
at
yeah.
all. It is the holiday season, of course. This Saturday, you guys, we are going to have the Unstoppable guys, right, Kenton? So that'll be fun. We'll get to talk with
Yep.
them. And then the last space of the year, that following Saturday, of course, we're gonna have Ruggira. We're gonna have one big Ruggira space. Credit accounts going live. They're doing all kinds of amazing stuff. So that will be great. And then one last plug here, you guys. We're going to have the blog of THORChain that is going live. Give me a second here. I'm gonna put that in the thingy majigger here. No, we're gonna have okay. So can you maybe speak about that, Kenton, if you know about the blog?
I think he's just the intern's asking us to tell you guys about the blog. We got the blog on the THORChain website. We're gonna start using that going forward instead of Medium. And there's an email sign up list there. So if you guys want to join the email list, sign up, get updates. So anytime there's new features, news, the quarterly reports, anything you're seeing on Medium, we're gonna have on the blog and the website. And so I'm working on trying to migrate all the Medium articles over to the blog, so it's all in one place. And yeah, it's another way we're trying to build our audience is build an email list. So email is still considered the hands down best social media, if you will, a way for connecting with people. So we want to build that out.
Very cool. And apologies for the clumsy delivery on that on the TC intern. I will do better next time. Thank you, Kenton, for the backup there. And guys, we're going to be having all kinds of new content coming out. As I said earlier, lots of great conversations are happening right now. Lots of cool people are stepping up to do amazing things with THORChain. If you want to do something, if you want to help, please reach out. And again, I'm going to pitch it one more time. If there are anybody out there who thinks they have the technical skill to become a node operator, please reach out. We'll hook you up with RuneTard. Let's increase the decentralization of this network. It's prime time. THORChain's ready to go. We got a lot of things going. Please reach out. I'll do whatever I can to help you. It's go time, you guys. It is go time. All right, guys. With that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in this episode. This has been a great episode. Thank you again, Chad. You're always so generous with your time, and Kenton is always a blast doing these with you as well. I hope everyone has a great remainder of the work week, and we will see you Saturday. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
There, guys. Bye.